Hi, folks. Our next company that I want to take a look at in our little journey here, a little tour of collaboration as it sort of sprouted and grew through the automobile industry over the last 120 years. Again, we started with Henry Ford, and thank you for taking a look at all of those videos. We saw a rather long biography of Henry Ford. And again, my position on that is that Henry Ford had an idea. He wanted to make a highly technical product. He wanted to create innovation. This goes back to what we were talking about with our net logo example of adding innovation into the economic model. What if we actually created wealth whenever we actually did economic activity rather than just handing a dollar back and forth and trading slices of the pie? What if we grew the pie? It turns out, at least in the net logo agent-based model, if every time we have economic activity, if we actually grow the pie by adding a little bit of growth, everybody wins. Even those folks who were in the lower 50% of the wealth, they were taken out of negative territory and seen from a neutral observer, way far away. They were getting rather wealthy as well. We still had the upper 50%. The higher most wealthy were definitely more wealthy than the lower wealthy, but everybody as a team was wealthy. That sort of that is shown. There have been lots of international efforts, and this is fantastic actually, in removing humans out of abject poverty worldwide. And in the first 20 years of this century, from 2000 to 2020, humans have lifted about 50% of our human population out of the ranks of abject poverty by, again, innovation and lifting everybody out rather than just saying take it from the top and hand it to the bottom and having a closed pie. But what I want to talk about next was one of the rivals to Henry Ford, again, who initiated. If Henry Ford had robots available to him, I'm certain that he would have used robots to make his factory, the Rouge, but we just didn't have the technology to make robots. So he unfortunately had to hire humans and convince them through whatever means necessary. And we saw the video. It wasn't pretty most times. Sometimes there was lots of carrots, like doubling wages and unionizing, and maybe some perks, and maybe some the knowledge, the invention of the weekend, and some holidays and the like. But there was also a bunch of sticks to quote unquote force people to act like robots, because we just didn't have the industrial robots necessary to make all of those cars. Because he didn't have all of this technology to not only make all these robots and then be able to have those robots change what they were doing, it turns out, because he did not have a huge infusion of customization and choice for the customer, then he lost out. Ford Motor Company lost out to another young automobile company, which was grown into and eventually known under the umbrella of General Motors. Talking about going from just one car, the Model T, which was made for 20 years. That if you bought a Model T the 20th year, it was the same car that was made the first year. Maybe some slight changes and modifications, but it was not radically different from the first car. But General Motors, this umbrella company, it started out by buying lots of other smaller companies, and with those smaller companies, this entire family of companies, it marketed its ability to sell customers on choice. And again, it's not all roses and candy. General Motors is also attributed for creating something that we now know as planned obsolescence. So what they would do is they would come out with a 1935 version of a car, and before the 1935 was even finished rolling off of the assembly line, they already had the 1936 planned, and they would make it really, really awesome. So awesome that as soon as somebody would buy a 1935, instead of saying this is a really dependable car, I think I'm going to keep it forever, or at least until it rusts out. By the time the 1936 came around, they said, oh my gosh, I have buyer's remorse. I wish I bought this newer car because it's so much more awesome. We still fight with that now. Like, just because you happen to have a certain version of a cell phone or a smartphone and the new one comes out, it may just be because the technology allows you to do much more greater things. But we still have this idea of first of all, let's come out with a new phone every year. And the new phone has to be, the best thing ever to convince people to drop their $1,000 old phone and buy a new $1,000 new phone, even though the old phone is still working. So we're still dealing with that today. So yeah, we're going to see a video, or work through a video, of General Motors and sort of its birth. And just like we had Henry Ford as a face of the Ford Motor Company, Alfred P. Sloan is probably the biggest face of General Motors. He did not invent General Motors, but he became its as it says here on Wikipedia, its president, chairman, and chief executive officer for quite some time, through the 1920s, the whole way through the 1950s. And again, it says here on his opening paragraph, he created concepts such as the annual model change, brand architecture, actually having different brands. So we have Chevrolet, we have Buick, used to have Pontiac, Saturn, Cadillac, and then GM and GMC. They were all brands with this umbrella, and different customers could buy a different brand based on their level of luxury they're looking for, rather than just buying a Model T Ford. He also was very, very good at inventing sort of our modern edicts of industrial engineering and automotive design. And then also there's another link on here if you want to visit this on Wikipedia. This planned obsolescence, which is what we do now. It turns out that he has his degree in electrical engineering. He's an electrical engineer, and he graduated from MIT. So it turns out that because of all of his inventions, he was a very innovative person, just like Henry Ford was. The School of Business at MIT is called the Alfred P. Sloan School of Business. So there's the Sloan School of Business at MIT. It usually switches back and forth between number one or number two with the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania here in Philadelphia. So very, very well known for being that innovator that learned how to, again, sort of give birth to collaboration, or at least the control of systems of how we get people to work together. We still did not have a lot of industrial robots during the 1920s to the 1950s. So unfortunately, we still had to hire lots of people who worked in and around Detroit, Michigan, where just down the road from the Ford Motor Company. We haven't even talked about Chrysler. These employees that lived around that area, they would go to work, and of course they wouldn't be hired for their brains. They wouldn't be hired for their college educations. They were hired just to be hands and fingers to move things around to get things done. Just before I get off of here, another notable person is the chief innovation officer at General Motors, Charles Kettering. Again, another innovative person. Lived out was born near Ohio, and actually lived in Dayton, Ohio. He started his own company called Delco, the Dayton Electric Company. He is very, very famous for inventing the first successful electric starter motor. So when you get in your car and you turn your key, or more modern, when you get in your car, step on the brake and then press the start button and your engine starts, Charles Kettering was the first person to invent one of those things. Before then, just like pulling the string on a very small lawnmower, or pulling the string on a chainsaw, you used to have to pull the string or spin a crank in order to get the car to start. He started, and now all of our cars have electric starter motors, so very, very well known for that. But again, talking about the ability to infuse innovation and infuse technology into these products. Charles Kettering is definitely known for that. And I think he is mentioned inside this biography we're talking about. If not by name, they talk about the electric starter. And then again, just while I'm dropping names, it turns out that both of these folks were amazingly wealthy for what they did. They were rewarded very handsomely for being so innovative. And they donated lots and lots of money, thankfully, to fund a New York cancer hospital, and endowed something that's called the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. Perhaps you have heard of it. It's headquartered in New York, and they happen to have some branch places around the area. So again, when we look at this industrial video of people, working as robots in industrial lines and working with lots of big machines, it looks dirty, and people aren't having a lot of fun working there. And just because of the signs of the times, we didn't have industrial robots. Both of these two gentlemen. One, very, very innovative. They were scientists in their own right. They applied their science to work in business and to generate all of these cars. But their legacy-wise, in addition to having the car company of General Motors, which is still around, we also have the Sloan School of Business at MIT and the Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, which is pretty awesome. So I'm going to leave this, and then we're going to take a look at take a sort of a video history that's going to summarize how we get a whole bunch of people to collaborate as a group to make a whole bunch of products. And of course, the main thrust that I'd like to highlight in this time around with General Motors is how we can get all of these people to collaborate on making varied and different types of products, not just one, not just the Model T or not just the Model A, but to actually have folks add diversity into their products and get them to collaborate on making lots of products that have different choices.